So, hello, everyone. Welcome to this live event with Sue William Silverman on the topic of Flash Memoir. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Karin Gutman. I'm the founder of Spirit of Story, and I want to introduce you to our illustrious guest here, Sue William Silverman. She is an award-winning author of 9 works of nonfiction and poetry. Her forthcoming book, which is actually being released in about 2 weeks, September 1st, yes, thank you, is entitled Selected Misdemeanors, Essays at the Mercy of the Reader, which harnesses the flash essay form to its most potent potential. These unapologetic word grenades focus on pivotal, fleeting moments that define a life, imbuing minimalist forms with maximalist emotion and a no-holds-barred attitude. Each explored action in this collection creates a butterfly effect, where seemingly ordinary events ripple into emotional tsunamis. Sue co-chairs the MFA in Writing program at Vermont College of Fine Arts, and her media appearances include The View, Anderson Cooper 360, and PBS Books. So thank you so much, Sue, for coming. We were in conversation about a year ago, so this is your second time here, and I feel so honored, and you are very prolific.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me back. It's really great to see you again. And thank you all for coming. As I said, it's great to see some people I know, and it's great to see people I don't know and hope to get to know.
Yeah, great. So we're going to talk about Flash Memoir today, which is inspired by your book, Selected Misdemeanors, which was written entirely in the Flash form. So interesting. We'll have to dive into whether this has been done before or whether you're creating a new kind of experience for the reader. But I think to start, I think what would be helpful is if you could maybe define what Flash Memoir is. I mean, it's a shorter version of memoir, but beyond that, like, how would you define it?
Right. It is, of course, defined by being short. It's called, short essays, flash, brief. And it's important to know it's not just an anecdote, like this happened to me. It's more than that. So the narrative is short, but it needs to be revelatory. It has to mean something. So it's insight into our lives in kind of these short flashes of time that I like to think of as kind of quick, shimmering epiphanies. So we capture the sense of how fleeting yet revelatory a moment can be. So just think of it. Outwardly, it's a small form, but inwardly, it's very vast because it's going to speak to the larger human experience.
Nice. Okay. So, and just like in terms of rules, like, would it be under 1,000 words? Like, if we were to put a word count on it?
That's tricky because different, just say in terms of publishing, I've seen a lot of different guidelines. I mean, it can be 100 words. Brevity.com, which is sort of the Bible of, Flash, they have 750 words, but I've also seen it up to 2,000. So just, if you're looking to publish, first of all, you have to write what you have to write in the number of words that it is needed. But if you're looking to publish in a specific place, just look at their guidelines because they do vary. But probably about 1,000 words is probably pretty close.
Mm-hmm. Um, this is getting specific already, which I didn't want to dive into, but it's sort of on my mind. So when you say, you know, it can be up to 2,000 words, I mean, that's essentially like essay length. So is flash another word for essay?
No, I mean, it really is supposed to be short, and maybe 2,000 words is too long. But all I'm saying is I've seen guidelines on
Mm-hmm.
websites that say that. But but there are things that, you want to think of in terms of being brief, in terms of like, there's not gonna be a lot of background or exposition.
Mhm.
You have to get in and get out really fast,
Mhm.
and to do that, you're gonna want to rely on metaphor and, what makes this piece sort of universal.
Mhm.
But you have to do that quickly without a lot of, build up or
Mhm.
fade out. So it is a form unto itself.
Mhm. Got it. Okay, that's helpful. Okay, so based on I did a little research, obviously, sort of leading up to this, because I sort of I've spent many years working with writers, working with, personal narrative memoir, but not specifically flash. So my understanding is that flash fiction has been around quite a bit longer. Like since the 80s, 90s, it was being used as a term, and yet flash memoirs a bit more recent, like 2000s, 2010s. Is that sort of your perception of?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, fiction. I mean, even the whole memoir movement didn't start till like the mid 1990s or so. So flash fiction and fiction itself, yes, has been more an accepted kind of genre. And I like Brevity magazine started in 1997. So I would say that maybe
Mm,
2 years before that or so, around in there is when the flash slowly began because when flash nonfiction, it's not it's sort of close to poetry, but it's got to have a narrative,
mhm,
but when Brevity started, I mean, it was a small little website, and now it's
mhm,
just huge.
mhm.
And so it's really has evolved over the years for sure.
And but Brevity does publish both fiction and nonfiction.
No,
It's strictly nonfiction.
strictly nonfiction.
Oh, okay. And that started in 97. Okay, so well that sort of lines up. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um so just curious, do you have like an opinion on why flash memoir sort of it does seem to be really gaining in popularity, and I'm wondering personally, like, this whole brevity, like our attention spans are a little bit less with the social media and the texting and everything seems to be shorter. And is that what do you believe that that's sort of what is the appeal and why it's gaining in popularity? Or do you think that there may be a deeper resonance to the form?
I think that that's only one part of it. I mean, certainly we do have shorter attention spans, but I think it's more than that. You know, creative nonfiction, it really just did start with lots of memoirs being published. And then following that, there were a lot of personal essays and then memoir in essay form. And then there's a lot of experimental nonfiction, like, there's speculative, there are list essays, there's hermit
Mm,
crab essays. I think the form of creative nonfiction is so flexible that
mm,
people just kept pushing the boundaries of it. And then it's like, well, why not flash? Why not do something short? So I think it's also the evolution of the form,
mm-hmm,
which is very exciting and very good news for creative nonfiction writers because it is a very flexible form. And basically you can do anything in it. In my book, I have, mainly it's essays, but I also have some like postcard essays. They're written in the form of a postcard. I have photograph essays where there's the photograph and then a really brief, almost haiku-like um, essay that accompanies it with a long title. So it's very flexible.
mm-hmm. Was it fun to be playful like this? Like, did it feel freeing to you?
It was fun, I have to say, and, it's like I never knew, like, from day to day what I might be working on in that moment. I've written 2 long form memoirs, and you pretty much knew every day where you're gonna pick up from, and that could be sort of a comfort. But this was more exciting, and, for me, what I do is and this whole book is flash fiction to me is writing your obsessions. So everybody out there is wondering what to write about. Make a list of all of your obsessions. I have like
Mm,
20,000 obsessions. And don't, it can be something really little. Like I have an essay about my obsession with creme de menthe, the liqueur, but I didn't know why. So we write our obsessions to find out why we're obsessed with the thing.
mm,
And so, just start writing what your obsessions are and then see which ones you want to write about. Um, so it was sort of fun just saying, yeah, I really am an obsessive person and all the different things I could write about.
mm. Well, I'm going to take that to the workshop. Okay, so let's dive into kind of the characteristics, kind of get a little bit more specific about, what actually defines the form. And I would love to share with you kind of what I've come up with just in my research and get your opinion, and maybe kind of you can riff on these different elements if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, so we just spoke about brevity and precision. So we sort of captured that, which was at the top of my list here, and this sort of idea that every word matters. So does every word not matter in like a full length memoir?
It does, but if you mess up a sentence, nobody's going to notice it. That's the
Right.
thing. So you do have to be more careful of every word is exactly precise because you don't have a lot of room. If I have a 200-page book and there's a clunky sentence, hopefully you're not really going to notice it, but you
Mm-hmm.
you really do. I mean, it's like poetry in that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not poetry because there's more of a narrative than poetry would have, but otherwise, yes, you really have to be very careful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So next I have it that it's moment driven. So like you're working with a singular event or vignette that's unfolding in real time. Would you agree with that?
I think that's of one way to look at it, but it has to be not just like an anecdote, like this happened to me. It needs to be so it can be a moment, but what does that moment mean? So you have to dig deeper into that. But as I said, for me, I it's sort of where you approach it, and that's going to be depending upon your own process. But I do approach it more from my obsessions than from a moment.
Mm,
Um, and that's just, sort of the way I work as a writer. But whether it's moment driven or obsession driven, it's really important to discover the sensory imagery that's going to reveal either the moment or the obsession, because
mm,
you want to then take that imagery and slant it, convey it in such a way that it's a metaphor. Uh, and you're going to hear me probably say the word metaphor a lot because metaphor is crucial in creative nonfiction in general, but it's really crucial in Flash because it's a shorthand way to get the meaning of the essay across. And okay, so just to back up for a minute. So a metaphor is a sensory image that's sort of outside of ourselves that we use we write about it in such a way, slant it in such a way so that it conveys a meaning and will reflect on your interiority as a narrator. And I'm just going to I'd really like to give an example because this is sort of at the heart of it. So I wrote an essay called The Long Road Out of Eden. And I'm just going to sort of read a very small section of it and show you what I mean by metaphor. So just the background, the narrator is a dinner guest and she's mesmerized by a worm in a strawberry that's plucked from the hostess's garden. And then the narrator thinks, must I eat the strawberry? Or is there a delicate way to tug the worm from the red-seeded flesh without the woman noticing? I'm fraught with indecision. Then that's the end quote. So in this case, I was obsessed with this worm in this drop. I mean, this happened like decades ago, but I'd never written about it. I was obsessed with it. Like, why? And so I wrote about it. And what I discovered is that when it says I'm fraught with indecision whether to eat the worm and the strawberry or not, the essay really is about the narrator's whole life is sort of fraught with indecision. Like she's not a good decision maker. So the worm in the strawberry is a metaphor. So if I
Mm,
just wrote an essay talking about, oh, I'm such an indecisive person, I don't know what I'm going to do, and should I do this or should I do that? That's incredibly boring. But so you need a sensory detail, worm and strawberry, that's going to be a metaphor, in this case, a metaphor for indecision,
mhm,
to show the reader what the theme of the essay. And the reason why this is important is even if I just told you sort of an anecdote, hey, I was at a dinner party once and there was this worm and a strawberry, and you would say, oh, yeah, that's sort of interesting. But you can't relate to it because probably you have not been at a dinner party where you had a worm in a strawberry. But since the metaphor speaks to the underlying theme about indecision, that's how you get your reader engaged in the work, because there probably has been some time in your life when you have been indecisive, when you haven't known what to do. So that's why metaphor is important, because you take that sensory image, you convey it in such a way that it conveys an abstract feeling that a reader can relate to. And in this
mhm,
case, it's indecision. So if ever any time in your life you have felt indecisive, then the hope, of course, is that my essay would resonate with you.
mhm.
So is
So
that clear? Is that
yep,
clear?
yep, it taps into what's universal, sort of the
Yeah. So that's why, one of the key elements is in a flash is to focus on that one main sensory image that's going to, in a small form, that's going to resonate in this deeper internal way.
mhm,
And
mhm.
that's why metaphor is so important. It's really at the heart or the key of flash nonfiction. Okay, can you have more than one underlying theme? Is a question in the book. Yes, you can, but it's tougher to do that in short form. I don't rule out anything in a way, because if you can do it, you can do it, and great. But you know, in like a long form or a longer essay or a memoir, you can have themes and then variations on the theme. In a flash piece, it's a lot easier just to have one underlying theme. And it may suggest some other themes or something, you know, but um, but I was, particularly if you're starting out, try to just focus on one underlying theme. Because like if you're into like 700 words or 750, there's just not space to really, because you don't want to drop in a theme unless you can really convey it.
Mhm,
So
mhm. That
yeah.
makes sense. So you say you can sort of focus in on a moment, you can focus in on an obsession, you can focus in on an image. Any other things that sort of you could work with that come to mind?
Yeah, so the beginnings and endings are really key. And again, they're key in anything we write, but in Flash, they're particularly important in that to begin, you want to begin right in a scene. There's not a lot of time to sort of, hem and haw, just right in a scene, ground the reader in a moment where something, is about to happen, or it could be the narrator's uncomfortable and she has to sort of uh, figure a way out of it. She needs to understand her situation differently. So start, and as soon as you can introduce what your major image is going to be, like in this case with the worm, it's not in the first sentence, but it's in the first paragraph.
Mhm, mhm,
So get that overriding sort of image that's going to be a
mhm,
metaphor as soon as you can in the piece. And then the ending, again, so you don't have like a long memoir or even a long-ish essay where you can really get the reader involved in your story, right? You don't have that luxury. It's going to be short. So you want to end then also with a strong image that's going to stick in the reader's mind, because they don't have the long narrative to get to know you and or to try to remember it. So in order to get them to remember your essay, just think how much stronger it would be if you end it with the final metaphor or metaphoric image that's sort of like a reverberating after image, which would sort of speak that the narrator has learned something, has a deeper understanding of her situation at the end than she
Mhm.
did at the beginning. So there is still going to be that movement that we have in
Mhm.
memoir, that who I am at the beginning is going to be different from who I am at the end. But if you, rather than end it on sort of like, well, this is what it all means and sort of a summing up, that's not going to be as effective as if you end on a really like a really kind of blistering hot or really cold something image that will stay with the reader.
Mhm. Mhm. Makes sense. Well, you just touched on sort of what was next on my list is this idea that it's immediacy, immediate. So, like, it starts, the wording I have starts at the flashpoint of conflict or change. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, it does. Even if it's not the first sentence, it's
Hmm.
still going to be within the first few sentences or
Hmm.
paragraph. It is like, why is this essay starting now? What just happened? So, like in the worm essay, that I have to call it the worm essay, but the long road out of Eden. In the worm essay, the worm is right there in the first paragraph, and like, oh, the narrator doesn't know what to do about it.
Hmm.
So, um, you know, it it does need to be pretty much up front. And the I think the other thing, just thinking about the flash form, is that and when and why do we use it? Sort of like what is it all about?
Hmm.
So we do have these big moments in our lives, these long narratives, and I've written two memoirs about it. One was about growing up in a really disturbing family, and my second one is about 28 days I spent in rehab for a sex addiction. So I needed like at least 200 pages to get through that long narrative.
For
But
sure.
yeah, but when you think about it, what really makes up a life? It's really, we have so many minutes in every day, every
Mm.
week, every month. There are millions and millions and millions of minutes when seemingly nothing happens, but yet things do happen. I mean, I had a worm in a strawberry. And so I think of nonfiction is all these incremental moments that really do make up a life that want to have their say, that means something, because
Mm.
our lives aren't just these big sort of humongous moments in time,
Hmm.
but they're really, most of life really are kind of small moments between these larger moments. What do they mean? And we learn what they mean through discovering these metaphors and reflecting about them, which we can only do during the writing process. Like I could have sat and talked to you about this worm in a strawberry for hours, which would be really boring, but I really wouldn't understand what it meant until I'm writing. I mean, that's why we're writers, right?
Mm.
So during the writing process, by really getting inside this worm in the strawberry, I'm going to come to understand, oh, well, in fact, a lot of my life has been about indecisions, and I'm still an indecisive
Hmm.
person in many ways. So, it sheds light on me, and it's just this tiny little moment in time, this one little,
Mm.
10 minutes, but yet you can make an essay about it. So, save those big narratives for your long memoirs and stuff, but also just remember that most of life are these flash moments
Hmm.
when just they zip right by and we might not even think about them. But
Hmm.
when it comes time to write, that's why I say make a list of your obsessions because it's amazing how many you'll be able to generate, and each one can be its own flash essay.
Hmm. Hmm. It's almost like the word that came to mind, like flash moments lead to kind of flash insights. Like if you take the time to dive
It's
into it.
That's right, and the
Hmm.
courage.
Like
I
there's a
mean,
reason they stick with you, right?
yeah, I mean, frankly, I hadn't thought of this worm and the strawberry in decades. And then when I was working on the book and I was sort of making my own list of obsessions, it came to me. Oh yeah, I remember that dinner party. And I was just like this, I was a college intern. I didn't know what I was doing with my life.
Mm.
And so I started writing about it. And then I came to understand that, oh yeah, Sue, you're really an indecisive person. But I was able to show it through just this one singular image that became a metaphor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this one I'd love to hear more from you about this idea that flash memoir is leans more on being observant than it does on inner reflection, or just as much about being observant as it does on the inner life of the character. And is that true? And what does that mean exactly?
Well, I think we have to be observant, but it's like, what do we want to observe? And I tend to be observant around anything to do with the senses. I'm sort of like a sponge. I just soak things up. And it really helps a lot with writing. What does something smell like, taste like, sound like, feel like, all of the five senses. Think about the five senses. Somebody wants to see a list of my obsessions. I will give you some. Okay, hold that thought, Bella, because they're wild, some of them. Um, so, okay, now I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, perception. So I'm very perceptive and about my surroundings. What's in my kind of space, and but I take that and turn it inward as a reflection, so that, because to me, flash nonfiction, the heart of it is a reflection on the deeper self, about finding these metaphors that speak to our interiority. Again, remember, metaphor is something that's outside of ourselves, like the swarm and the strawberry, that if I write about it and in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to shed light on who I am. And metaphor is a form of, reflection is sort of two things. It's a little tricky, but you can reflect by thinking on a page, but you tend to do that more in a long form. If you do it in a flash essay, just think faster. I mean,
I see. Because I was going to say, it sounds like memoir, right? Like, and what is the difference really? I suppose you don't have as much time for maybe internal monologue in a flesh.
you don't. And that's why you want the metaphor,
Right.
because the other form of reflection really is metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
Because reflection is sort of a broader term for anything that sheds light on the narrator. What sheds light on the narrator? I can think on the page, I can try to figure something out by writing it. But that reflection is really going to evolve from a metaphor,
Mm-hmm.
some or an action. Something has to happen for you to be able to reflect upon it, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And so in terms of being observant and perceptive, yeah, be as observant and perceptive as you can about the physical world around you. And so then when you come to writing, you will be able to recreate those sensory images that you can then turn into metaphor that will then cast light on your
And maybe
interiority.
it's equally as important, just in the flash form over. I'm just thinking with memoir, you have the opportunity to dive into that inner world. You have more space and time to do that. So maybe the observation is the key to sort of what you're saying, a reflection on the interiority. And maybe that becomes a bit more important in the flash form, to find a way to use these observations as a way to tap in, and that you have a little bit more latitude and full length memoir to. You have other techniques you can use, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. You can have long scenes that can really, evolve into a deeper understanding of the character. You can
Right.
summarize moments, you can have pages of reflection. You
Mm-hmm.
can't do that in Flash.
Right.
Everything has to be condensed. And again, sorry to keep saying metaphor, but it's true. The best way, the easiest way, the most important way to create your narrative is through these images that speak to the theme. Because
Mm-hmm.
if I describe this worm in the strawberry and convey how it's about indecision, I don't have to go on for pages obsessing about every time I've had, an
Moment
indecision
of
or
decision. Mhm.
yeah. So it is that short moment in time. Somebody asked if I ate the
The
worm.
worm.
So okay. Ordinarily, I would say, well, read the book and you have to find out, but I'm not going to do that to you. But the fact of the matter is that I don't remember. And I just, and
Oh, God.
I just absolutely, my brain is like empty where that is. But I make that sort of work in the
Mhm.
essay itself that I don't remember. But then I've come to realize that that's not really the point of the essay,
Mhm.
whether I ate the worm or not. The point is this deeper idea of indecision and what am I going to do with my life and should I marry, shouldn't I marry, should I have
Mhm.
children, shouldn't I have children, I mean, should I have a career, I mean,
Mhm.
what should I do? So it's more about that. But yeah, I don't remember if I ate the worm. And I tried to think, well, would I have eaten the worm? And I have a feeling I might have, just because I was very kind of, I don't look in from after all these books, people would be shocked to know I'm sort of shy. I don't come across as shy, but I sort of can be. And back then, I probably would not want to brought attention to myself or hurt the woman's feelings. I hate to hurt people's feelings, and she would have felt bad. So I probably ate the damn thing,
Mhm. Mhm.
but
Oh
it
my
didn't
gosh.
kill me. So there you go.
So I'll just kind of move through these more quickly. I have listed that it needs to be concrete, like grounded in specific details, not abstractions. Would you agree? Yeah.
Yes.
Emotional and insightful. So it delivers both a punch and a flash of understanding. So that sort of flash of insight that needs to come from the piece itself.
Yeah, exactly. Again, because you don't have those 200 pages to develop that sort of full narrative that's going to be emotional and insightful. You have to do that through these images. They have to carry the weight, and and they do. I mean, that's the thing. They are the punch.
Mm-hmm.
The strawberry in the worm is the punch, and the flash of understanding is this narrator's inability to make decisions. So, and again, just everybody write down this line. Metaphor is your friend. It is, because an imagistic metaphor will be remembered. And that's the flash of understanding you want the reader to take, after they finished it. Um, and and it's universal. I mean, again, because nobody else probably has had this worm in a strawberry, not know what to eat it or not, it becomes universal because it speaks to this deeper uh, abstract sort of theme of indecision. So a metaphor is a tangible image of an abstract theme.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then the final thing I have here is that it's true to life. So it is a form of nonfiction. So Flash Memoir honors the truth telling contract that a memoirist has with their reader, right? There's that sort of
It does.
underlying intention to
It does.
be true.
You absolutely have to be. There is a but though. You can also be speculative, which is a whole other thing
Mm,
that's evolving out of speculative
mm,
nonfiction. You can suppose, did something happen like this? It's
mm,
like, or did it happen like that? Or perhaps this happened. Or you want to imagine, maybe you're writing about your family, you want to imagine how your parents met. Obviously, you weren't
mm.
there, but you would write something like, I imagine this happened. So you're not breaking the contract with the
Right.
reader. You're letting the reader know you're imagining something, you're speculating on something. Did it happen like this or did it happen like that?
Hmm.
And what we speculate and what we imagine is part of who we are.
Absolutely.
So it's still true.
Hmm. Well, I
Uh,
feel like speculation is a really important part of memoir.
it is.
I didn't know that that was more sort of a recent evolution. It is.
Y- Sort of, yeah. I mean, people maybe have done it before it became a thing, but yeah, um, it's I have one essay in the book that's completely speculative, couldn't never have happened, but yet is completely emotionally true.
Mm,
So, is just speculation and perhaps that happened and imagining and stuff like that. So yeah.
We are going to read the strawberry piece in a minute. So hold that thought. Julie's wondering how many essays are in the book.
And Julie, I'm so sorry because I actually meant to count because I knew somebody was going to ask me and then I forgot. But there are a lot. Let me show, can you see that? So this is part
Mm,
of the table of contents. Okay, there's that. And then the table of contents goes on for 2 more pages. So there are a lot of them, as you can
mhm,
see. And
mhm.
apologies, I really didn't mean to count because I knew somebody was going to ask.
The
And then I forgot.
answer is a lot, a
A
lot.
lot, a
Yeah.
lot.
Um, so let's see here. What do you see? I mean, because I guess for me, what I notice when I'm reading these shorter pieces is that I'm not as invested, in the character. And is that even the point of Flash Memoir? Like, I guess I want to know what are the, maybe another way of saying it is, what are the advantages to writing in Flash, and maybe what are some of the disadvantages, and can you accomplish, is there a reason that it's in a flash form versus a full length memoir? I mean, you kind of touched on that, but can you approach it from a different way?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, if you're wanting to write about these sort of moments in between these big events, you're going to have to either write a somewhat shorter essay or, a flash piece. And the advantage of it is that because, as I said, most of 71 essays. Thank you, Nancy. My former student, I knew she'd come up with this. Thank you. Um, okay, what was I saying?
No, in terms of its advantages.
Oh, yeah, advantages. So, because most of our life really are these sort of moments between big events, they need to be explored. I mean, if we're
Mm,
really, writing creative nonfiction is exploration of the self, and you can do it in this long form. But why would you want to miss out on all
mm,
of these smaller segments? This other essay that, if we have time, I can read today is Seven Up is a Cure for Irony. It's all it is about how before I would go out on a date with my high school boyfriend, I couldn't eat dinner. I just drank a glass of Seven Up. So it's really Seven Up becomes a metaphor, like the bubbles in a soft drink, how they evanesce and they disappear. Well, that was basically how Jamie acted towards me. I would have a date and then he would disappear. And so it's Seven Up becomes a metaphor. And, I've written longer things about Jamie, this boyfriend, but yet this idea of the Seven Up, it just really spoke to me. And it was so consistent. Every time we had a date, I had to drink a glass of Seven Up. And, why? What did that even mean? And so by writing the essay, I came to understand that the Seven Up was a metaphor for how the bubbles will rise to the surface and they explode and they disappear. And Jamie would always disappear. And so I wanted to, explore that because otherwise it would just be, hey, I used to drink Seven Up before I went on a date with Jamie. And again, who cares? But
mhm,
you were
mhm,
asking about would a how does a reader care about somebody in a
mhm,
short piece? I think if you can really nail a metaphor for it, and the reader can really identify with that underlying image, like in the Seven Up case. Well, have you ever lost somebody, in a love situation or a friendship, and they kind of bailed on you and they went away? And it
mhm,
was abrupt and it was sort of hurtful. So if you've ever had an experience like that, then you would relate to it. So I think it's a matter of, through metaphor, being able to relate to the narrator's experience.
mhm,
But I
mhm,
think in terms of like a whole collection of Flash, you end up spending, over 100 pages with the narrator. And so that
mhm,
probably
mhm.
would resonate more than maybe just one piece.
I see.
But I think still one flash essay, a reader should be able to relate to something in it. Uh,
Mhm, mhm. That's memorable and that sticks with
yeah,
you, that kind of lingers, right?
yeah. Yeah,
So let's since we've referred to these two essays, why don't we look at them and have you read these two
sure.
pieces, the strawberry piece and the 7 Up piece. And if there's any other, I mean, feel like you've kind of shared quite a bit about kind of the craft of it, of these two pieces. But if there's anything else that occurs to you, I'd love to hear
Sure. Okay,
your
so I'm going to
thoughts.
start with The Long Road Out of Eden. And just
Okay.
to set it up a little bit
Well,
uh, from a craft standpoint, just think about the juxtaposition between the woman who's holding the party and the narrator. What's the juxtaposition between them? Because juxtaposition is also sort of important. And then think about how the worm and perfection, the idea of perfection, uh, work against or with each other. For decision making versus non-decision making. Okay, the long road out of Eden. One late afternoon after work, as a college intern on Capitol Hill, I sit on a sunny porch in a house off Wisconsin Avenue with an older woman, a friend of my parents. A spotless white cloth covers a patio table. Yellow dishes match the pitcher of lemonade. Silverware gleams. I'm too young to know the diplomatic language of adults, so I'm unable to tell a woman about the worm in the beautiful strawberry plucked from her own garden. I'm holding the strawberry in my fingers, about to take a bite. Must I eat the strawberry? Is there a delicate way to tug the worm from the red-seeded flesh without the woman noticing? I'm fraught with indecision, especially since the woman, single and in her 40s, seems to live with no indecision whatsoever. She never wanted to marry, she told me. She bought this house on her own. She's an assistant to the secretary of the Department of Agriculture. First job out of college, she says. I started at agriculture as a receptionist. I worked my way up the ladder. The woman had invited me to dinner to help guide me on the ins and outs of a career in government. The woman's cotton blouse and skirt are starched and fresh. Her hair appears sculpted with hairspray, her fingernails coral. After taking a DC Transit bus from Capitol Hill, I feel wrinkled, my hair a wild, ambiguous frizz. In addition to my indecision about the worm, I'm uncertain about my future, unlike the woman. I'll graduate from college in 1 year. Should I return to Capitol Hill and work my way up the career ladder, buy a house, marry children? Should I plant my own garden, but beware of worms and strawberries? I consider how the woman who works for the Department of Agriculture should know about pesticides, but pesticides are poison. And the worm, were it not in the strawberry, just inches from my lips, would be innocently worming between blades of grass. Back then, did I eat the strawberry? I don't remember, nor do I recall if I ate the worm or if I told a woman about it. Yet, I long for that moment of possibilities, my future undecided. Sitting on the porch, listening to the woman, I could foresee how I would marry, would, in fact, have I could not foresee how I would marry, would in fact have too many ex-husbands, how I would never work my way up a career ladder, never have children, or plant a garden. What I remember, now no longer a girl, is the sun warmth on my young bare shoulders on a late afternoon porch. And what I will miss is that one almost perfect strawberry. Or was it perfect anyway, even with the worm?
hmm.
So again, I wanted to end on that image of the worm as the major metaphor, as a way to engage the reader. And also by ending with the question, also helps engage the reader because the reader will think about that. So that's something that, um, could help engage the reader. And, in some ways, the narrator also identifies with the worm more than the woman, sort of the freedom of the worm in the grass,
Hmm.
which somebody was asking about different themes. And this isn't a different theme, but it's sort of tied into the theme of this idea of freedom, or you're going to be tied down. And even the way I described my hair was wild and sort of ambiguous because I was
Mm,
feeling ambiguous. So that's why you want to be very careful with your word selection, like what would sort of clue the reader into how the narrators feel like, well, she's ambiguous, sort of about, thank you. Somebody said they like the hair metaphor,
mhm.
and that's again something you'll think back, the reader hopefully will think back on. Um, so okay, let me read now this 7 Up as a cure for irony.
Okay.
And here, just pay attention to how 7 Up as metaphor and about sort of the evanescence of 7 Up and which would be a metaphor for the evanescence sometimes of love, so that even if you have never sat around having a 7 Up before you go out on a date, as 7 Up as metaphor, you might be able to relate to the idea of evanescence in love or beauty or anything really. Okay, 7 Up as a cure for irony. I pour a glass of 7 Up before a date with Jamie, my high school boyfriend. Every time. I don't eat dinner. I can't. I tell my parents I'm not hungry. I carry the 7 Up into my bedroom, closing the door. I set the glass on the vanity. I perch on a stool before the oval mirror. 7 Up is a honeysuckle. 7 Up is honeysuckle summers, the slant of sun at dusk on hydrangeas, the sweetness from an everlasting day that lingers nowhere special. I switch on my transistor. Here in New Jersey, the radio picks up rock and roll stations in Manhattan. I believe the third song will predict my future. The fifth song will reveal Jamie's true feelings toward me. What will the seventh song in the lineup pretend? I sip the 7 Up, coolness bubbling my tongue. Pink lipstick, eyelash curler, mascara. It's 6:30 p.m. Jamie will ring the doorbell in half an hour, precisely at 7. If I ate food, I would feel ill. I almost feel that way even now, sick with longing for a boy who cares for me, just not enough. Doesn't 7 Up provide all the nourishment I need? I would run away with Jamie. I would marry him. I would have children with him.
Mm,
He won't do any of these things. He never will, at least not with me. Besides, I have no real conception of marriage or motherhood. But before these thoughts even rise to the surface of my mind, they evanesce and disappear. I'm only in 10th grade. I dab gardenia perfume on my wrists on the hem of my cotton skirt. My Scotch terrier bumps the door. I let him in. He plops on the small blue carpet beside my small blue bed. The fur on his back is sculpted like pressed flowers. If only I could capture a palpable presence of Jamie in one of the songs before it ends. If only I could always see him in the skim of light rippling across the town's turquoise swimming pool. If only his scent remained on the corsages from proms which decorate my lamp pole, petals now colored rust. If only I could envision him floating, floating, floating in bubbles, in bubblets of 7 Up. Maybe these are the only places where I'll always ever have him. Jamie. Jamie is like 7 Up. His blonde hair, his pale skin, his fizzy kisses,
mm,
barely tickling my lips, are too intangible to last, so must be sipped before they flatten. In winter, walking home from school, I silently wish on early stars just before snowfall. But now it's summer. When I walk barefoot, the tar on the street almost burns my soles before night cools the heat, like the mercurial temperature of Jamie's love. Later tonight, after the date with Jamie, I will be back in this room, alone. I'll open the window, slide the screen, watch the effervescent moon for signs that never appear.
mm,
Okay, so we talked about reflection earlier, and
mhm,
let me just point out a section so where the paragraph has Jamie is like 7 Up. His blonde
mhm.
hair, his pale skin, his fizzy kisses, barely tickling my lips, are too
Yep.
intangible to last, so must be sipped before they flatten. Now, is that a thought that I had at the moment? No, not at
Mm-hmm.
all.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we write about these things, years, decades later. So now the narrator me, the
Mm-hmm.
author narrator me, comes in, takes this metaphor of 7 Up and reflects upon it. And so, yeah, in a memoir, you can have pages of reflection.
Mm-hmm.
Here
Mm-hmm.
in a flash, you need a flash of reflection. It's
Mm-hmm.
just his kisses are too intangible to last, so must be sipped before they flatten. So that's what I mean by a short sort of snippet of reflection. Excuse me.
Makes so much sense. That's so helpful. Also, I love that line. Doesn't 7 Up provide all the nourishment I need? Just
Sure,
isn't
why not?
right. Just that, doesn't isn't Jamie all she needs? Just that kind of, you know,
And
non-relationship, basically, right? Like just the littlest possible that
yeah,
disappears.
and the other thing with Flash that I think is worth noting is that, okay, if you've read my other works, you know that my father misloved me, but also in I actually had an eating disorder. I was anorexic at that time. But that's not what this essay is about. And
Mm,
so that could be talked about, written about. I've done that in memoirs, but that's not what. So in a flash, you need to forget about a lot of this background exposition and focus on the moment, which is one of
mm,
those things. How do you focus on the moment? So clear out all of the other things that they are going around you, but they're not part of this flash piece. You want to focus just on this moment. I can write about having an eating disorder other places. I don't need to here because
mm-hmm,
really 7 Up itself is a metaphor for, the evanescence of love.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Or and so that's what I mean on, when you focus on the moment and be, you don't have to introduce your whole background, all the
right, right.
exposition.
So you're saying that the eating disorder is not relevant to this piece that you're exploring here. Is it
It's
even,
not,
does it show up at all? Like in your mind, is it part of this piece at all? I
no.
wasn't sure if you were going there, that it is there. It's just not important to
Yeah,
mention.
yeah, no, I mean, somebody might think, gosh, is that, does she have an eating disorder? But you also could think, well, it's just, one night a week she has 7 Up for dinner, big deal.
Mm-hmm,
That's not an eating disorder, and it wouldn't be, except that I also had one. But
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
but no, it absolutely is not part of this piece
mm-hmm,
at all.
mm-hmm.
And so you don't want to introduce something that's going to, drag you off into 20 more
So
pages.
you have to be really clear about what you're writing about. And like you said, sort of really focusing in on that essential image and metaphor that is anchoring the whole thing. Yeah. It's
Absolutely.
so
You really do.
specific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just focus, 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 and focus on, I know you all can fill in the blank here, metaphor, because the way I describe the worm and the strawberry, the way I describe the 7 Up has to speak to the inner feelings of the narrator. So
Mm-hmm.
just, and if you maintain that focus, then you will intuitively know, okay, no, eating disorders don't belong in this piece. Or, when I had dinner with that woman, so I was working on Capitol Hill and all of that, and that could be interesting. I've written some about it, but it's not part of this piece either.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The worm
Right.
piece, what my job was and how I got there,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
or where I was even going to college or anything like that.
Well, I want to, there's so many questions here in the chat that I want to get you. And first I want to ask you, is it okay if we stay a little longer to answer some of the questions?
I'm fine to stay as long
Okay.
as you need me to. Yep.
Okay, okay. But before we dive into those questions, I just want to kind of flip the script a little bit and like, what are the limitations? In a way, I'm asking the limitations of flash memoir, and I think I'm asking that with the intention of like, how do you know if what you're writing about is decidedly not flash? Like where are the edges that sort of clearly, I mean, you kind of touched on the fact that like, oh, there's some really big stories that need 200, 300 pages to really explore. So what is it? Is it the what? Yeah, what is it for you that?
It's really, if I have, okay, back to my obsessions. And if I have an obsession with this worm and this strawberry, that's all I'm writing about. So it's really, that's why for me, it's easier to start with an obsession that just has a brief moment in my life in a way, and or with 7 Up. But it's, how many pages do I need to write about something? If I'm spending 28 days in rehab, I need like 250 something pages. So it's really, or like say, why couldn't this maybe be 12 pages? Well, that's something I wish there were like a rule. There isn't. It's sort of trial and error. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of these essays, I tend to write larger. So for me, there's a reason why I start out with long memoirs and now I'm writing flash. I tend to throw everything out there.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these essays were longer. And then I kept trimming, that's what revision is for, right? I kept trimming and trimming and trimming and just clearing out, okay, no, that's not part of it. So if you really focus on wanting to write flash, just go through it word by word, sentence by sentence. And ask yourself, does this cast light on the theme? Does this deepen the moment? And if everything you say, yes, it does, then you're going to end up with a longer piece. But if you can say, no, it really doesn't, this is really all I want to say about this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I said one of my obsessions was creme de menthe, and I wrote this essay about I grew up in the West Indies. My parents would have these parties and people would be drinking creme de menthe. And I just love the color emerald green. So I just, would sort of spy on their parties and look at this creme de menthe. And and the essay really is just, and then the people would drink the creme de menthe and it would be gone. So it was really about the ephemeralness of beauty. And the major metaphor was creme de menthe, but I want, that beauty doesn't last.
Meaning
And
that the party, that the creme de menthe was part of the beauty of the party that you watched and witnessed, and then it disappeared by morning, kind of.
right,
Is
because
that?
people, yeah, because people drank it. And so it was gone. And and so I can write about the whole idea of beauty doesn't last, flowers die, stuff like that.
Mm,
Not to get too grim here, but there's cycles of
mm,
life. And so that's a really short essay, shorter than these. And but I could explore this whole idea of the ephemeralness of beauty
mm,
in like, page and a half.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. So let me just ask you a few random questions in no particular order, except in which they were delivered. So I think you touched on this, but just if you have anything else to say on it, how would you say Flash differs from poetry? And you were saying that Flash has a kind of narrative, really, that is kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm,
In poetry, you can have narrative poetry, I guess, but in poetry, one image suggests the next image suggests the next image. So the images sort of drive the poem forward. In a flash piece, creative nonfiction, you do have some sort of narrative, some sort of action that,
mhm,
so the action is working with the images. So the action connected with the images are driving the narrative forward.
mhm, mhm. Makes sense. To what extent are all memoirs a series of Flash?
They're not like so in my first two books, they're written probably you would say sort of more like a novel, like just one straight through narrative,
Mhm,
and not necessarily chronologically, but still a straight through narrative. And so that's what differentiates like a memoir from a flash piece where you need like 200 pages to get through that narrative, and a flash is just that condensed version.
mhm, mhm. Um, Hang on. Um, okay. I'm wondering about the structure of the project as a whole, which I did want to ask you about, like how you thought about structure. You know, you mentioned and I'll finish reading this piece, but like one of my questions is, so you put, you know, even you said each piece kind of put them all together and they create a bigger whole. And how did you think about that whole and what each these pieces added up to together? But the question is there a through line that ties the essays together? And if so, were you aware of it when you began working on the project, or did you find it as you went along?
I was not aware of it at all. And the book actually had several different titles before I realized it was about my selected misdemeanors. By the way, however, the demeanors, I've never been in jail or anything like that. They're more emotional misdemeanors. I just wanted to clarify that. They're about sort of relationships with inappropriate men. Um, One night I was in a seedy bar in Galveston, drunk, and I decided to get divorced, drunk alone in a seedy bar. So those are sort of the nature of my misdemeanors. Okay, so no, initially I was just writing flash pieces, and I was going through a hard time and I needed to write, and I just started writing flash pieces. I also wanted immediate gratification because they're short. But so the book is divided into three sections. The first is strange entanglements. The second part is called How To and How Not. And the third part is Grieflets. So each one sort of revolves around that. And then also I have these through threads of I mentioned the postcards, and also I have these photograph essays. Like here, I don't know how well, this is me
Mhm.
working on Capitol Hill.
Wow.
And then this part is the essay of it. Um, and I've invented another persona since the book is misdemeanors. I call myself Miss, like MISS, misdemeanor. Um, and this little flash essay's misdemeanor considers the first of many jobs which she will fail, not interested in the passage of legislation on Capitol Hill or much else except meeting congressmen behind closed doors. That's the whole title. And then the essay itself is eyes downcast, posing as earnest, forging the name of her congressman, yet the bill is hers to pay, not pass. But anyway, there are a bunch of these uh, photograph essays. So the essays and the postcards help to be sort of a through thread holding things together. And this idea of misdemeanor, this alter ego also is a through thread. And then just the idea, the underlying theme of the misdemeanors, and very, very loosely defined though, because you can't have like a, Nancy said there were 71 essays in here. You can't have like 71 essays and have them really cohere completely. They're not supposed to, but but they are supposed to kind of speak and deepen this theme of search for self-identity, and who the overall theme is the narrator is on a search for home, capital H. I am searching for the idea of home, comfort, safety. However, all of my actions pull me away from this idea of
Mm.
home. I take risks, a lot of emotional risks. Um,
Mhm.
and so that's the major conflict of the book, the search for home, wanting home, versus uh, the narrator's sort of insistence that she's involved sort of with internal and external betrayals. So her actions push her away from home. And that's
Mhm.
those two things bump up. So that's sort of the major conflict that and so that holds the book together.
And part one, part two, part three, is there do we see movement in this? What's the movement in
The
those three
movement,
parts?
yeah, is the narrator is on this search and a mistake she makes along the way. And at the end, the last uh, couple of essays speak to how there's not a neat answer, nor should there ever be in creative nonfiction because our lives continue, but that she finds a sense of acceptance, maybe.
Mm. Mhm.
So, okay,
Mhm.
Bella, I think it was you asking about my obsessions. The last essay pretty much takes the major metaphor of the last essay is a car wash. I am obsessed with car washes. I love going through them. So the last essay is The Road to Nowhere. And it's sort of about the narrator's obsession with car washes and how they're a metaphor for sort of cleanliness and a sense of movement. You go through these different
Mm.
stations, right? And I just get really excited about car washes. So, but it's also, you can sort of think about when you shoot out the tunnel at the end of the car wash, it's sort of like the idea of being reborn. So I sort of mind that for all it's worth, this whole idea of
Mm.
car washes. That's one of my obsessions. Okay, I am going to answer this question because she asked it twice. So I am the only person I know in the history of the universe who is obsessed with Pat Boone, Adam Lambert, and Jeffrey Dahmer. So that is one of my claims to fame. So, I mean, that's what I mean. Obsessions can be really out there. I mean,
Mhm,
Pat
mhm,
Boone is like this early 1960s, very clean cut, very Christian. I want him to be my father, basically, because my Jewish father was molesting me. I don't want to get off on that. But anyway, so I want him to be my father. That's why I was obsessed with him. And I actually did meet him later in life. Then
mhm,
Adam Lambert was on American Idol. He's the front singer for Queen. I'm completely obsessed with his voice. But it's these people as metaphor. So Pat Boone was the metaphor for a safe father. To me,
mhm,
Adam Lambert, particularly when he was on American Idol, is a metaphor. He reminded me of sort of my hippie self, my flower child self, the way he dressed in all sort of in costume. So that's why I really had a major crush on him. And then Jeffrey Dahmer, I know, is a tough sell. He's a cannibal, but I said I had an eating disorder, right? Well, cannibalism is the
mm,
ultimate eating disorder. Sorry, folks, but cannibalism really is the ultimate eating disorder. And but
hmm,
oh God, somebody else who is obsessed with Adam Lambert. Yes. Um,
mhm,
But then I'm obsessed with, cream de mint, this very beautiful little liqueur, or 7 Up. I mean, that's why don't be afraid to go all out with your obsessions. It can be something as joyful as drinking or not drinking it, but looking at cream de menthe, or as really out there as Jeffrey Dahmer. Don't limit yourself.
mm,
And you sometimes have to be courageous to admit, oh my God, I really am
mm,
obsessed with Jeffrey Dahmer. And
mhm,
I was.
mm,
So just go full tilt with your obsessions.
mhm. What about this one? Are these flash memoirs always looking back in time, or can they start in current and end in current?
Absolutely can begin and end in current. Yes,
Mhm,
I have a few in here that I wrote them pretty much as they were happening. Um, I had an MRI that was scary. It turned out to be nothing. It was like a smudge on the screen or something, but it was on my pancreas. So I thought, oh God, I had 10 minutes to live. And but I was really scared. Plus, I'm a hypochondriac. But so, it's a little flash essay sort of about life and death and stuff like that. So that was very much in the moment.
mhm.
The Road to Nowhere, even though I've always loved car washes, it's sort of written more. So yes, it can be in the moment. Don't think that it can be something that happened yesterday or 10 minutes ago.
Have you ever started a piece of Flash and discovered the piece actually wants to be longer? Because I was even just thinking of the strawberry piece, like, you really tap into the decision, like bigger, much bigger life decisions. It's a much bigger story in some regard, the sort of indecision that plays out over
Yeah.
over time.
That's a really good question. And the answer is that I could have, except for the fact that I've already written 2 full-length memoirs,
Mm,
2 essay
mm,
collections. One of my essay collections, the Pat Boone Fan Club, My Life as a White Anglo-Saxon Jew. And then I've written another one, How to Survive Death and Other Inconveniences. And those are long essays. There are actually a couple of flashes in there, I think, but they're basically long essays around those themes. And so I've written all my long narratives. I really think I have, not to say I won't come up with something
mhm,
else,
mhm,
but I feel like I've pretty much written. So these, I was very clear that they were Flash, and I saw them as Flash from the get-go. I didn't know that exactly they would turn into be a collection. I was
mhm,
publishing them individually, and then I
mhm,
sort of saw how they were speaking to each other. So for me, because I've written so many long pieces, they haven't, but I would say if you haven't, um, then yeah, I would be open to that for sure if you have not written a lot of longer things. Yeah.
Hmm. Is there is there potentially something like start with Flash and build up to longer pieces or long, longer narratives? Like, is it kind of an in some way maybe a good place to start to?
Oh, you absolutely can, because sometimes so I teach at Vermont College of Fine Arts, and sometimes I'll say to a student, you know, I think that you have either a memoir here or an essay collection. They'll say, "Oh my God, now I have to write the whole thing," and they get sort of nervous. So yes, so think you can just start thinking, okay, I'm just going to write a little two-page thing, but then just follow your energy.
Mm-hmm.
Follow your energy. If there is still energy around this subject, it means you are not done with it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
keep going. Absolutely keep going.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like that's what you do. You are doing with your own writing. It's like, oh, I've done these big long things. I'm interested in, that's where your
These little
energy was.
moments.
Yes,
That's
these little
right.
moments. Exactly. That's where your curiosity was.
Yeah.
So last one here. Do Flash Memoir have to end with an understanding or a pondering? What if there is no answer or lesson or outcome?
So I think that there doesn't have to be any big lesson or any big outcome or nothing like that. So it can be very small, but I think there wants to be some, it can be tiny, tiny, but some kind of
Mm-hmm.
deeper understanding that there's some movement afoot.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, you sort of just have an anecdote. This happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to create like a piece of literature, um, and that's what we're doing, right? Creative nonfiction, we're turning our lives into art. Then just try to push it a little farther. Like those two essays I read, there's nothing big, like, oh, big flash at the end. Um, but like the 7 Up essay, it ends with the idea of uh the moon is like the last let's see, where does it go? Oh, right. So the last line of 7 Up is later tonight, after the date with Jamie, I'll be back in this room alone. I'll open the window, slide the screen, then says, watch the effervescent moon for signs that never appear. Okay, so that's not any big thing, but what I tried to do, the idea of moon is sort of the little metaphor here that ends it. We all know that the moon changes shape, right? It's large, it's small. And in Romeo and Juliet, Juliet talks about the inconstant moon. So it's just like the reader may or may not get that. I don't know. And it's okay. Subliminally, they probably sort of will get it. The idea that the moon changes, that it's inconstant, just like Jamie
Mm-hmm.
was inconstant. And that's not like a big, thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a little hint of how the reader, how the author, the narrator sees things a little differently. So
Mm-hmm.
just try to come up with something that just pushes the narrative just a little bit. So we feel some sense of growth on the narrator's part, some sense kind of movement.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Ah, thank you so much. This was so satisfying. I learned a ton.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you all for these great questions. And I do see a lot of really nice comments. I wish I could respond to all of you. You can feel free to contact me. I'm at SueWilliamSilverman@gmail.com. If you want to connect at all, my website is SueWilliamSilverman.com. So just thank you
And
for your interest.
September 1st, it's coming out. You guys give her some pre-orders so that we can have a very successful launch. I really am
Thank
wishing
you.
that for you, Sue.
Thank you. It's actually sort of available now, at least on
Oh, is it?
Amazon.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, they release things early. But anyway, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and to see all of you out there, friends and new people. Thank you, thank you. And good luck with your writing. You can do it. It's just doing it.